Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Ian, for inviting me to the meeting, and thank you, Carol, for introduction. I will go straight to the topic and try to squeeze in what I have to say in the 10 minutes. I will focus on three things tonight. I will try to give you a little overview of what's happening in Poland. I will give you a little of historical context, so you know where we're coming from. And finally, I'll give you some of my arguments and my perspective. And here I have to say that I speak here tonight in private, not a professional capacity, so I don't represent any group, organization or party. What I'm going to say tonight will be solely my personal views and opinions. As you probably all of you here hopefully know, in the 23rd of October in Poland, the top court ruled that the existing legislation on abortion, which has been in place since early 90s, is unconstitutional, so incompatible with the constitution, which again has been in place for many, many years. And out of 3 exemptions to legal abortion, it ruled out 1 in case of fetus abnormalities and congenital defects. I don't want to talk too much about Polish politics here, but I do have to mention that the current government, right-wing government ruled by Law and Justice Party, has been reforming the judicial system in Poland since 2016. So, for example, the appointment of judges to the Constitutional Tribunal and especially the president, Julia Przyłębska, is still disputed, and they're not recognized as independent judges. To add on, the verdict, which took place almost a month ago, has not been published, which constitutionally it should be straight after the meeting. But the government is holding on because of the widespread protests. Why I'm saying it is because you might have noticed both in Poland, in Oxford and across the world, when the protests happened, the banners, the slogan did not only refer to the arguments of choice and women's rights, but there were also lots of anti-governmental slogans and banners. And this is anti-government protest. To give you a little bit of historical perspective, in post-war, in 50s, Poland adopted law which allowed women to terminate their pregnancies in quite a few cases, including one where a woman was in difficult living conditions. And that was quite a very broad term, which allowed for interpretations that really enabled women to access quite easily abortion, to the extent that it was women from Sweden who came to Poland in 60s, 70s to have a procedure to terminate their pregnancy in Poland, which was affordable and accessible, which wasn't at the time in other countries. But things have changed after the communist rule ended, after 89, in 90s, early 90s. As you might know, Catholic Church is considered to have played a very significant role in the change in the political system, in ending communist rule and allowing Poland to free itself from the Soviet bloc. And as a result, church was allowed to have a huge influence on Polish politics, and that was a trade-off. So for one of the first few things they've done, they've restricted abortion rights, and they've removed the law which said that women could terminate their pregnancy in case of economical hardship or difficult living situation. And since then, since 90s, the church and right-wing groups and parties have tried to restrict further. There were bills and ideas to totally ban abortion in Poland, which was rejected. But in 2016, for example, they've discussed a bill where helping, so for example, doctors would be prosecuted and or go for 5 years to prison for helping with termination. And that's resulted in first big wave of massive protests. It was called Black Protests, with the symbol of umbrella, and hundreds of thousands of people came to streets, which stopped at that time. But obviously the right wing didn't give up, and they've been trying to again challenge it. But I think what's problematic here is that it is used as a political tool. So as you can see, the government again brought the discussion at the beginning of the second wave of pandemic, which was predicted by everyone. Everyone across the globe and Europe knew that the second pandemic is coming, and we've got now 600 people dying every day in Poland because of COVID. And the government, instead of focusing on the economical crisis, which affect all countries because of COVID pandemic, they are decided to divert public's attention to perhaps cover the inability to deal with the pandemic and have support for people in relation to pandemic and dealing with COVID. I think when you talk about abortion when abortion enters political and legal scene, it becomes a tool. It's a trade-off. And personally, I absolutely do not believe that Jarosław Kaczyński, who is the leader of the ruling party and who is more important in Poland than the president and the prime minister. Everyone knows that he's telling everyone else what to do, and he takes all the decisions, that he cares about children, unborn or born, people of an age. And the same with Donald Trump, who obviously is supporting, but actually it's the other way around, who is supported by those groups who want to restrict access to abortion. So what we need to do is to change that situation, that the abortion is used as a political tool. And one of the things that I think should be done is talk more about it. Because why is it used by politicians? Why is it brought up? Because it usually results in very heated debates, because it's controversial. Why? Because it's emotional. And it's emotional because it remains a taboo. We're in fourth wave feminism, but still a lot of issues affecting female bodies, such as, and especially reproduction and reproductive rights remain taboo and still need to be demystified. So menstruation, miscarriages, abortion, all those things remain taboo. They're not talked enough, and they seem to affect a small number of people that then can be ostracized. And
Dorota, 1 minute, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, sure. And the other thing that I think I wanted to say is about the language use, because it's not, you might have noticed I decided not to use pro-life, because it's not pro-life or against life. It's also not pro-abortion or anti-abortion. It's all about the choice. Having choice, giving, whether the state gives a question, whether the state gives an individual, society and citizens the right to choose, or whether we allow the government to choose for us, and to what extent the government can interfere in people's lives and makes decisions. And that's, that's whether the government would ban divorces, or, Chinese one-child policy that you have to, and you can only have one child. To what extent we allow country states to dictate our lives and who we form families with, so LGBT rights and same-sex marriages and so on. So I just want to raise the issue of how kind of the right of individual, right to choose, and kind of human rights versus the state deciding for citizens, and forming too restrictive rights, which we know always anti-dictatorship, authoritarian states, and anti-democratic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorota. Thank you. Just looking now. Our next speaker is Sophie Squire, journalist from the Socialist Worker newspaper.
There we go. I'm unmuted. There we go. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be able to stand on a platform with you, Dorota, and it's brilliant what you're doing with the protests in Oxford. So yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about Poland. I think Dorota's probably covered that quite extensively and brought up some really brilliant points about the state in kind of relation to abortion. The one thing I would like to add is there was a brilliant report that the fascist-led Independence Day march was actually significantly smaller last week than it was last year. And I think not only because of the coronavirus, but also because of the amazing actions on the streets by thousands of people in protesting the new restrictive abortion laws. So I think that's another thing that really needs to be celebrated, and I guess comes on quite well to what I want to talk about in my half of the meeting. So I want to talk a little bit about both why is abortion the kind of taboo? Why is, as Dorota put it, why is it taboo? Why is it still an ideological battleground for different politicians to this day? And I also want to say what we as socialists will say about it. So to start, I want to say the pushback to women receiving safe abortion is rooted in a system that prizes women's role in the family. The right often talk about the traditional family, where women have a subordinated role within it. Women still to this day, most of the time, in majority, take on a caring role within a family. In the West, of course, we're told this is changing, and maybe it is somewhat, but still to this day, women do most of the childcare, the domestic labour, and of course they often end up care for elderly relatives as well. Socialists before have said that the family and the home is where the next generation of workers is cared for, and much of the time the current workers are also cared for as well. Of course the children might be cared for, but also there's other workers in the house that use each other's support. That support system is a way of of living and supporting each other. And this really effectively lets the state off the hook for caring for people, for caring for children, for caring for workers. In fact, the family is important for this reason. Care is provided while bosses profit off of women's labour, mostly women's labour in the homes. I'm going to say women's labour for the sake of argument. But this setup isn't ideologically built into men or women, for that matter. The ruling class has, for hundreds of years, promoted the idea of women being caregivers, selfless, subservient. In Victorian times, women were described as the angel in the home. Of course, we know this doesn't fit with our reality in 2020. Women make up a massive part of our workforce, and many would rail against the idea that women are subservient or selfish or selfless. another interesting stat about that is 66% of key workers are women. So the makeup of the kind of work that women do now has definitely changed. But there is still a deeply rooted idea of sexism in our society. You know, women experience sexism all the time in our interactions with people, in the ideas about what women can achieve and more. But still it persists. There is an idea that women's place is still in somewhat about making children, about making the next generation of workers, about having children. You know, women who don't choose to have children or know they don't want children are often kind of treated that like they can't possibly know their own minds or bodies. And this means that abortion is often met with a vile rhetoric, not just from the far right, but from the establishment itself, and those who would consider themselves even perhaps towards the centre. Women's bodies are still treating as not being their own, and reproductive kind of issues are still undergo intense scrutiny, and women's reproduction also, you know, it's under intense scrutiny all the time. A really good example of this that isn't, you know, abortion is the treatment of women with, for example, endometriosis, which is a inflammation of the womb. And women are routinely, this disease is not taken seriously. Women are routinely talked down to, and a lot of them are told if they have kids, the pain will go away and the symptoms will go away. You know, real shocking examples of sexism within medical practices. And I think we have to be very clear about the right, and also our establishment. They don't care about women. They don't actually care about children either. You know, there's always the idea that you know, people who consider themselves pro-life are for the children. They don't care about children at all. You know, these same people attack social reforms. They attack benefit systems. They also protest against sex education in schools. You see this in the US and in the UK as well, that have been proven to lower teenage pregnancies. They really don't care about people, the people that actually are being affected by the curtailing of reproductive rights. They also protest when women want more access to contraception as well. And you see that with the US right. You know, there is the agenda that it comes along with a lot of other things that US right really seem to go hard for, like, for example, anti-LGBT rights, you know, being against the Black Lives Matter movement. And we can really see it very clearly that it's used as a tool. Again, women's bodies are used as a tool in the US like they are done in Poland. This is used by the ruling class because it helps them cut across and could corral working class people behind a right-wing agenda. Obviously, a lot of the time they will use this with religious morals. You know, an interesting thing about the kind of the US right is that Donald Trump, for example, someone who, you know, most of us will know for supporting going along with anti-abortion rhetoric, he actually was very hesitantly pro-choice in the 90s. You know, he really just changed his rhetoric in order to appeal to the base that he wanted to appeal to, which was the right. You know, he changed, you know, and I think that that's an important thing to note. Again, like, there's not really any, there's no real rhetorical politics or morals to this. This is something that can be changed and shifted in order to try and gain popularity and public opinion. Because again, as Dorota said, abortion is such is for a lot of people an emotional issue or a kind of emotive issue, and the right really play into that. You know, and when we look at the US now, I think that that the chair very rightly talked about you know, the appointments of Amy Coney Barrett to Supreme Court. This is someone who is from you know, a real anti-choice she's a part of some of these anti-choice groups. And you look at also the fact that, you know, this is a very anti-women Supreme Court. You know, we've also got Brett Kavanaugh as well on the Supreme Court, who I think a lot of people know has been accused of sexual assault a number of times. And by the way, in the Senate, they have to vote for Supreme Court judges.
Sophie, you've got 1 minute left. Oh.
Yeah, and he was voted for by the Supreme Court, even considering that he had had these accusations of sexual assault. And, you know, again, as I was saying, Amy Coney Barrett, you know, she was brought in explicitly to try and beat back at Roe versus Wade, which really protected the rights of women to get abortions. And I think, again, this is used all the time in order to kind of garner support for the right. But I think also we can talk about the right. We also have to talk about the successes. Of course, we see the success in Ireland a couple of years ago, where a mass movement, and it has to be clear, it was a mass movement, really meant for the Eighth Amendment, which protected the lives of a fetus above the lives of a woman, to be overturned in Ireland. This is an amazing victory. But I think it's also important we say that the struggle goes on. You know, I think we have to look at the extent of what we have now. You know, when we look at Ireland, and Northern Ireland especially, there's only 2 hospitals I read today that actually offer abortion. You know, women in Northern Ireland are still having to go across the channel in order to access abortions. And even when they are here in the UK, they have to go through a series of, you know, tests, go and see your GP, and you know, come up with the reason why you want an abortion. And I think I want to end on saying, really, like, that we want to see abortion not in this way that is from the lens of morals or religion. We see really adamantly this is about a woman's choice in her to do what she wants with her body, and that, you know, an abortion should be treated in the same way as any other medical treatment. You know, a really good example, I'm just going to finish, I'm sorry, I'm taking the biscuit a little bit, but it's really important, you know, that was shown when, you know, during lockdown, women were able to take the abortion pill at home. And this is something that has been campaigned for a long time, for women to be able to take it at home in comfort of their own home rather than in a clinic. Why couldn't have that happened before? You know, they cited that, you know, women could incur symptoms from the pill. Well, any pill could create symptoms. This again was about curtailing abortion and othering abortion to be something that wasn't just a medical practice. And again, really demeaning women in their right to choose what they want to do with their bodies. Women all have different reasons for having.
Thank you, Sophie. That's okay. Thank you ever so much. That was brilliant. Thank you. I'm just going to say, I would like to open up the meeting now.